Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Barely. That's not nice, Sean. Okay. So, I'm on my 49th journey around the sun. I'm 48 years old this year, so I am solidly in the realm of middle-aged. I'm married to a lovely woman named Lisa. We'll start our 10th year together in blissful matrimony this August. Yes, I have 4 good-looking, above-average grown stepchildren, and I have a miniature pit bull. Beware of the taco. I've lived in the Southwest, I've lived in the Northeast, and now I live in the Northern Plains of America. My mom and her family immigrated from Holland in the 50s to Phoenix, and my dad's family moved to Phoenix in the 50s from Spokane. And luckily, that's where I was born and raised. I'm a child of divorce, along with my little sister, Janice, and I'm a product of a wonderfully blended family with my littlest sister, Kelly. Lent, a season of reflection. This sermon is kind of a mix of personal connection and ministry, and my faith. And as I was thinking about this sermon, I had a number of questions that came up, but the one that was most prevalent was, where did I come from in my faith? And so this is going to be kind of the question for you tonight. What has influenced your faith? So our question tonight is, what has influenced your faith? And I apologize that the letters are so small. Going from a Mac to Windows didn't convert as well as I hoped. So, I'll say a really bad joke if nobody answers this thing. Oh, thank goodness.
I didn't want to hear a really bad joke. I'm Cindy, and I would have to say struggles in life and Lighthouse Church.
Thanks.
My name is Clifford Butcher. Influenced my faith were actually a lot of inspiration that I come down here. I mean, my struggles in life were outstanding, but I come down here to Fargo and I met Dale, I met Sean, Aaron, and Ryan, who's not here, I suppose. There's Aaron, but they influenced me big time on my faith, and I love what I hear every day. Every time I come here, they're inspirational.
Thanks. Anybody else? There's Jan.
Hi, I'm Jan. I've looked at people that I've known for quite a few years that have started coming here. And from where I sit, I can see such a wonderful difference in how they live their life and how happy they are. And that influences my faith, but also I have had so many near-death experiences in my life, and I'm still kicking it. So you're talking about middle age. I'm 9 up to senior, golden year stuff. And I'm like, no. But anyway, that's what has influenced my faith.
Thanks, Jan.
My name is Mark, and first of all, I'd have to say that my grandmother is probably the most influential person in my life with regards to faith. And also, I can still look back at some of the Sunday school teachers that I have had over the years, and a couple of pastors as well that molded and shaped my faith.
Thanks, mate. One or two more?
Hi, my name's James. I probably wouldn't have my faith today if there wasn't a family out there when I was a young teen who reached out to me and brought me in and invited me to church and before I even know who Christ was. And I know that family will always be near and dear to my heart. So,
Thanks, Scoop. Well, thanks. Oh, we got one more? Couple more. Wow.
My name's Jeremy, and it's been several people, couple guys that I met in AA, including Dale, and it's also been Dale's an alcoholic, and other things too, and also some writers like Richard Rohr and C.S. Lewis.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I'll say right now I'm probably going to cry. I did not grow up in the faith, and I was given a book close to 7 or 8 years ago from my mom's dear friend Sue. It was More Than a Carpenter, and she also gave me the New Testament in the Message version, and I had it for a long time before I read it. And when we moved to North Dakota, I had a lot of free time on my hands. So I read More Than the Carpenter, and I was introduced to Jesus Christ. And really found what I was missing in my life, this somebody to just love me unconditionally. And from that, I went on to read, started to read the Gospels and the Message, and I haven't been able to look back since she introduced me to Jesus Christ.
Thanks, Jennifer. Oh. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your sharing. It's amazing to kind of look back, even just a few months or years, on the influences for our faith. And as I was thinking about this sermon, an obscure verse came to mind that's been tugging at my heart for the better part of 20 years now. It's Matthew 12:7. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. Jesus is talking to people who should have known better, but they didn't. He's talking to people who think they know what life is all about and what God is all about, but they don't. And he's talking to people who are behaving dangerously in their ignorance. When I think about this verse, it humbles me because in many times in my life, I should have probably known better. I thought I had life and God all figured out, and in my ignorance, I was dangerous and sometimes added suffering to people's lives that didn't need to be. The earliest influences in my faith were similar to Mark's. My grandparents, my grandma and grandpa Blosser, they loved God with their whole life, and that love revolved around everything they did. My grandpa was the minister in a non-sectarian dispensational congregation. Say that real fast. And in the summer of 1984, they took me to family camp in Cascade, Idaho. And one morning, Brother Elliot Lovelace led the song service, and he sang a song a cappella that I'd never heard before called Majesty. It was beautiful, and it really moved me. I sensed that the Lord wanted me to make a decision for him at that time. What was surprising was how emotional that moment was. You have to understand that congregation, emotionality was kind of the enemy. It was, there was no such thing as altar calls. You would never play music during prayer time. You would never raise your voice or do anything dramatic because the risk was that you would be diminishing God's work, the role of God in the service. So it was really funny to have that sense of emotion when the service wasn't having that sense of emotion. I had the sense that Jesus literally had taken every sin I had committed and would commit on the cross. And I had images of people that were coming to mind during that service that were touched by God. So the only time I can remember my grandpa crying was over a communion service when he was thanking God for what Jesus had done, and that came to my mind. And then there was Brother Elliot, who had sang that song with such passion, and you weren't supposed to be passionate in church. And you see, in that congregation, we sang the hymns, the good old hymns. And Majesty was not a hymn. Majesty was a Pentecostal chorus. That was controversial. And Brother Elliot got a little bit of a theological beating from that. And I heard that, and I kept wondering, why, Lord, is that happening when he has such passion and love for you? So in those few minutes after that service, I was thinking about my grandpa and Brother Elliot and many, many others that I was seeing in a different light. They weren't Christians simply because they came from Christian heritage. They weren't Christian because they made a choice that provided them fire insurance from hell. They were Christians because they loved Jesus, and that was influencing every area of their life that I'd ever seen. Ironically, that little Pentecostal chorus kind of foreshadowed some of my ministry to come. I'd gone to college in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a pastor or go into business. So my degree was in speech with an emphasis kind of in business. So I kind of split the difference between the two. And out of college, I went back to Phoenix, back home, and I interned at a bank. And one day I was entering in fiduciary tax returns into the IRS system, and I hated that. Oh, I hated that. And I prayed, oh, Lord, this can't be what you have for me. And I got almost like a bobblehead picture in my head of this Pentecostal pastor that I had met a couple times in Flagstaff. And I thought, I just felt like I should give him a call. So I rang this guy up. And I told him what was going on. I thought he would laugh at me. And I boldly asked, did he have an internship? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, last week the board and I met and we need an intern. And within a few days, he found me a place to live in Flagstaff, and I was interning at a Pentecostal church, which was pretty crazy considering my non-denominational dispensational background. And the church that I interned with was a Foursquare Gospel Church, which was headed by the man who wrote the song Majesty. And I never connected those until I was doing the service. Now, the internship didn't go very well. I was there for a better part of a year, and the pastor needed my $300 to bring on a full-time pastor, and kind of voluntold me I should resign my internship. So I did that, and at the time, the church was planting another church, and I wanted nothing to do with that church plant. All I wanted was to be in the cool pines of Flagstaff. I grew up in Phoenix, and it was hot in the summers, and then I would go to Flagstaff in the fall, and I never experienced a cool summer in Flagstaff, and that's all I was looking for. This new church bought an old cafe and was remodeling it in Joseph City, Arizona, and that's about an hour and a half east of Flagstaff, a metropolis of 1,300 people with a megaplex of around 30 if you drove an hour around it. I kept feeling prodded to be a part of that, but I really wasn't happy about that. So I rang up that pastor, and I told him what was going on, and he said, hey, why don't you go out, pray at the new church that's being built and see what happens. So he gave me the key to the old Western Hat Cafe, and I commenced on my journey in my 77 blue Toyota Corolla. Went out there, spent a couple hours, and I felt like the Lord wanted me there. But I was kind of not in a very good mood, but I did feel like he wanted me there. And one of the things that he said, or kind of impressed upon me, which was kind of playful, was, guess what? You're not going to be spending a summer in Flagstaff. That was not called for. It was unnecessary. So I moved to Joseph City with enough money in my pocket to pay first month's rent and a deposit. Not enough to do utilities, so the pastor lent me some cash for that. And I sat in that little duplex with an air mattress, a beanbag, and a desk, and thought, oh no, what am I doing now? That's pretty crazy. I got a job as a waiter, and every day I had the joy of taking my earnings and putting 10% in the jar for tithing and 90% to live on. And it was tangible. It was really a beautiful experience. I still kind of go, wow, that was really neat. I ended up making the next month's rent, and I was able to pay back the pastor that month, so that was kind of cool. A few months later, I landed an entry-level job at a community college in their data processing department, and that started what would become my vocational career in IT. New Life Center, which is the church in Joe City, was a good and a tough experience for me. I was incredibly lonely, but it was fun helping to start a church. And my best friend from college helped us out for a while and led worship. So that was a lot of fun. I played a number of roles at New Life Center, from unskilled construction worker to bookkeeper, small group leader. I was even worship leader for a little bit, and that was really bad. We had to sing a cappella, and I would lose the tune. It was so bad. Oh. And I was backup preacher, and the first time I preached, half the congregation fell asleep. Literally half of them fell asleep, but only 2 people showed up for church, so that was my start. So 5 years later, working with the church, an old boss called me and asked me if I wanted to move to Connecticut to be the IT director of a community college there. So I took that job, and my new job required me to have a master's degree, which I didn't have at the time. And they said, yeah, that's okay. You've got 4 or 5 years to get it done, or we'll fire you. Okay. So I decided, I asked him if I could go to get a degree in philosophy or religion, and the president said, yeah, absolutely, we don't care, just get a master's. So I went to Hartford Seminary. Which of these 2 buildings, which are very tiny, you can't really see them, which of these 2 buildings do you think is Hartford Seminary? It's a fake question. They're both Hartford Seminary. So the one on the left was Hartford Seminary in the 1920s. That's their second building site. They came into existence because they thought Yale in the 1700s was too liberal or something. I don't know what they thought about Yale, but Yale was not good enough. So Hartford Seminary came in the early 1800s, and then in the 20s, they built that neo-Gothic campus. They then sold that campus in the 70s and created the White Building. So that's where I went to seminary. And it was the first postmodern influence building, at least that's known in the States, that was built with kind of postmodern influences. I put this up here because my faith felt as uncomfortable as that building to me. It was unnerving, it was uncomfortable, and it was an unfamiliar time in my life. I felt off a lot. Many of the preconceptions and the assumptions that I had theologically were challenged at that time. I was very depressed and lonely, kind of a theme that you'll hear tonight, I think, during that time. My career hit a low spot. I was in intense politics, and I wasn't sure that I would actually survive it. And it was about this time that verse, Matthew 12:7, came into my heart. If you'd known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. One of my classes was on conflict in the New Testament and how beneficial that was for the early church. And we always started our classes with a devotion. And this day, the pastor came in and he was visibly upset. And during the devotion in class, he mentioned that his daughter was living in Colombia. I think she was a journalist. And at that time, Westerners were being kidnapped and killed quite frequently. His son had some vocation in the jungles of Mexico, and his life was also in great peril. So he said, this morning I came to God and I was asking for peace. I was asking for peace. But the devotional he was reading had Matthew 10:34 in it. Do you not think I have come to bring peace to the earth? I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. He had come to God for peace, and he was offered a sword. When he felt like he had a choice, did he try to go around the pain, or would he be in the moment with the Lord? Would he trust, or would he do his own thing? Would he have his hands open in trust, or would he do his own thing? It was such a gracious and unguarded and raw moment of honesty, and it was very uncomfortable for me because there was a risk in it. It's a risk that you'll often find here, and that was the first time I had experienced something like that. And it challenged me on how important certainty was in my life versus the risk of being a follower of Jesus. Was I seeking certainty and being right, or was I seeking the Lord? So during my Hartford seminary days, I went to a Pentecostal church, and I met a young man named Eric who wanted to start a church. Well, good for him. I wanted nothing to do with that. Starting churches is really hard work. It's really hard work. And I was plenty tired. I felt black and blue from life, and I had nothing to give, and I was burned out. But eventually the Lord kind of empowered me to be a part of that little work. And so we helped start a little church called Case Mountain Community Church. And what's interesting, you can't really see it because it's so tiny, but you'll notice a tagline that's similar to something we have here: no perfect people allowed. So that was kind of cool, having that connection from my past. So I was at Case Mountain for 3 years and did a variety of things there. And then I moved here. Moved to Fargo, Moorhead, and I won't talk a whole lot about that, but my workaholic behaviors were still with me. I had a lot of unresolved pain and frustration with the Lord, and just in short, the start of my faith journey in the Fargo, Moorhead area pretty well sucked, because I pretty well sucked at that time. Kind of give you a sense of that. A few women in the church that I first went to, they refused to talk to me. For you see, I had sinned greatly by marrying a divorced woman. So one day I'm walking down the hall, and a woman won't make eye contact with me, and it really pissed me off. So I played chicken with her. So, she's this tall, and I'm this tall. And I wouldn't move out of the way until she made eye contact with me. And at that point, something had to change. I was starting to become self-righteous in my self-indignation. I was becoming jaded, and I felt defeated that I would behave this way. So Lisa and I went looking for a new church home, and we found Lighthouse. Which has been an amazing blessing. So at that point in my life, I thought my life in God could only be about negative surprises. I thought all expectations had to be chucked out the window and only disappointment awaited. I thought faith was about working hard and having to just live with contradictions, even if some of those contradictions meant I was a hypocrite. But I want to leave you with some reflections. I told Dale I was going to pull a little Dale Wolf tonight, so I'm going to try to give you some reflections as I was looking at my life a little bit, Lent, and the sermon in light of this verse. So the first one that you can barely see, it was always about God, which sounds so elemental, but I think about that the journey's all about me. Or if I'm in a better place, I think it's about how I'm supposed to catch up with where God is. But in reality, it's not about what I was doing. It wasn't what I was or wasn't accomplishing. It was how close the Lord had always been to me. There's scripture that talks about drawing close to God, and that is really good. But what I want to impress upon you tonight is that the reality is that He's closer than your breath. He has the ability to be in your being, and I had missed that for many, many years. Number 2, sometimes it's a blessing living in the gray without all the answers. Sometimes you have to live with your hands open. There are times when the Bible doesn't make sense to me. There are times when God doesn't make sense to me. And there's good reasons for that sometimes, but there's also times where that's just the way it is. And I can trust that He's in this moment, just like He was in all the moments before, or I can go do my thing, take my marbles, and go away again. It's the little things. That's where the action is. So I can't think of a major decision that I made that wasn't along the lines of what God wanted me to make. There probably are some, but I can't think of any. But there are thousands, maybe billions of little decisions that I didn't do well and that I didn't do right. Coming to Lighthouse, and all the little axioms that are around here have come to light, like doing the next right thing, keeping up with your side of the street, not worrying so much about the other side, not isolating. These itty-bitty, tiny baby moments of action in trust, in pain, in frustration, in desperation, in loneliness, in journaling, in meetings upon meetings, in not just saying the same old bullshit that's expected, this is surely the wonderful good life that the Lord is calling us to. The little things. It's the stuff of God saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." It's not so much the monumental tasks, although I'm sure that warms the Lord's heart as well. It's the in-between moments that grab God's attention. And that's something that I've been learning in this congregation and am so thankful for. If you had known what these words mean, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice," you would not have condemned the innocent. Maybe we can walk a bit in grace toward ourselves as well as others. Maybe we can refrain from condemning ourselves as well as those around us. Hey, maybe we can apologize now and then. Maybe we can be a little less manipulative within ourselves, and maybe we can ease suffering around us just a little bit. So we're in the season of Lent, a season of reflection, a season of what's the Lord doing in our lives. We're just a couple weeks away from a major celebration. And I want to leave you with a little benediction. So if you'd close your eyes for a moment. May the remainder of Lent be a time of honest reflection for you. May it be a time that you seek and give mercy. May it be a time when you experience unexpected good surprises from the Lord. Amen.